My promotion dinner was supposed to be the happiest night of my career. After 6 years of working my way up from a junior analyst to regional finance director at 32, my husband Daniel had insisted on celebrating properly. He'd reserved a private dining room at Rosewood, the nicest restaurant in our city, and invited both our families, his parents, his older sister Monica, my parents, and a handful of close friends. 40 people gathered around a long table covered in white linen and candles, all dressed up, all smiling. I remember standing at the entrance of that room and thinking, this is exactly what I worked so hard for. I should have known something was wrong when Monica hugged me at the door and held on just a little too long. She was always polished, always composed, the kind of woman who chose every word deliberately. But that night there was something off in her smile, something tight behind her eyes that I brushed off as her usual competitive energy. Monica had never quite forgiven me for marrying Daniel. She'd spent years making small comments about my background, my education, my salary, things she wrapped in compliments so carefully that you almost didn't notice the blade underneath. Almost. Dinner started beautifully. Daniel gave a toast that made me tear up. My dad squeezed my hand across the table. The food was incredible, the wine was flowing, and for the first hour I genuinely forgot to be guarded. I laughed too loud at my father-in-law's jokes. I let myself be happy. Then Monica stood up. She tapped her glass and the table went quiet. She smiled at me with that perfect smile of hers and said she wanted to add a few words. I thought she was going to toast me. Even after everything, some small naive part of me thought she was going to be gracious. She wasn't. She said she had always admired my ambition. She said I was very talented at positioning myself. She paused for effect. Monica always paused for effect, and then she said that she'd recently learned something that troubled her deeply, and that as a member of this family she felt it was her duty to share it. She said she had reason to believe that my finance degree from Westbrook University was not legitimate, that I had purchased it, that the company I'd worked for before my current job had dismissed me quietly because they'd discovered the fraud, and that my entire career, my entire identity was built on a lie. The room didn't erupt. It went silent in that horrible, airless way where you can hear everything, a fork being set down, someone exhaling, the ambient music from the main dining room bleeding in under the door. I felt every single pair of eyes turn to me. Daniel said her name. Just her name, quietly. Monica sat down, smoothed her dress, and looked at me with something that wasn't quite triumph but was very close to it. My mother-in-law asked if this was true. Not Monica. Me. She asked me if it was true, as though Monica had just reported a weather forecast and we were simply confirming the data. I want to tell you that I handled it gracefully in that first moment. I didn't. My face went hot, my hands went cold. I looked at Daniel and his expression was confused, not angry at Monica, confused about me. And that was the thing that almost broke me, right there at the table with 40 people watching. I took a breath. I asked Monica where she had gotten this information. She smiled again and said she had her sources. She said the previous employer in question had been very forthcoming when she reached out to them directly. She said she was sorry, but the family deserved to know. I want you to understand something about Monica. She is smart. She is calculated. She had spent months, I would later learn, constructing this. She had contacted my former employer, a company called Harland Capital, where I had worked for 3 years before taking my current position under the pretense of being a reference checker. She had spoken to someone in HR, planted doubt, asked leading questions. She had found a disgruntled former colleague who resented that I'd been promoted over him and had been willing to say vague, damaging things. She had built a case out of implication and insinuation and then waited for the most public, most damaging moment she could find to detonate it. What Monica didn't know was that I had been waiting too. Not for this specifically. I hadn't known about the HR calls or the former colleague, but I had known for 4 months that Monica was embezzling money from the family business. Let me back up. Daniel's family owns a mid-sized property management company, Caldwell Properties, started by his father 30 years ago. Daniel works there as VP of Operations. Monica had been brought in 2 years prior as Chief Financial Officer, A decision that Daniel and his father had made together, trusting her completely because she was family. I had warned Daniel gently, once, that mixing family and finances at that level needed safeguards. He'd nodded and changed the subject. 4 months before the dinner, I had been helping Daniel prepare for a board presentation, nothing unusual. I sometimes helped him organize financial summaries because he trusted my eye for numbers. While I was working through the quarterly reports he'd pulled, something caught my attention: a vendor payment. A company called Meridian Consulting Group had been paid $47,000 in the previous quarter for strategic advisory services. Nothing about it matched the rest of the financials. The payment category was vague. The vendor had no web presence I could find. The approval signature was Monica's. I didn't say anything to Daniel that night. I went home and I thought about it for a long time. Over the next few weeks, I looked more carefully enough not to leave traces, using only documents Daniel had already legitimately shared with me. I found 3 more payments to Meridian Consulting Group over 18 months. $31,000. $52,000. $61,000. Each one approved by Monica. Each one for advisory services with no deliverables, no contracts referenced, no corresponding project in the company records. I am a regional finance director. I know what ghost vendor fraud looks like. I had seen it once before at an earlier job and had flagged it to compliance. I knew what I was looking at. I also knew I was in an impossible position. If I told Daniel directly, I had no proof he would fully believe me over his sister. If I told his father without preparation, I risked fracturing the family in a way that couldn't be undone. And if Monica found out I suspected her before I had something solid, she would bury the evidence and turn the situation around on me. I was certain of that. Monica was the kind of person who attacked before she could be cornered. So I built a file. Quietly, methodically, over 4 months. I documented every payment, every approval signature, every missing contract reference. I cross-referenced company records. I found that Meridian Consulting Group was registered in Delaware under a name Meridian Group LLC with a registered agent address that matched a mail forwarding service. The business had been incorporated 2 months before the first payment from Caldwell Properties. The sole member listed was not Monica's name, it was a name I didn't recognize. But when I ran that name through public records, I found a marriage record. The name belonged to Monica's college roommate. I had a paper trail. Not perfect, not prosecution ready, but damning enough that any forensic accountant would know exactly where to look to find the rest. I had saved everything to a folder on my personal cloud account, organized and labeled. I had printed a hard copy and kept it at my office, not at home. I had told myself I would hand it to an attorney after the dinner, after things had calmed down, after the holidays. I wanted to give Daniel one last peaceful celebration before the world got complicated. Monica didn't give me that chance. So there I was, at Rosewood, with 40 people looking at me and Monica sitting composed across the table, and I made a decision in about 4 seconds. I didn't defend myself. Not yet. I looked at Daniel and I said, very calmly, that I would like to address this properly and that I needed 2 minutes. I asked the server if there was somewhere I could make a quick call. He showed me to a small corridor just outside the private dining room, and I stood there and I called my cloud storage and I opened my file on my phone. All of it. Loaded and ready. Then I walked back in and sat down. Monica had been filling the silence in my absence. I could tell from the way my mother-in-law's face had shifted, from the way a few friends were exchanging uncomfortable glances. She had been working the room. 30 seconds of me being out of sight, and she had been building the narrative. I set my phone face down on the table. I looked at Monica and I said, very quietly, that I was happy to discuss my credentials. I said my degree from Westbrook was legitimate and that I had my transcript, my diploma, and 6 years of verified employment history that anyone at this table was welcome to examine. I said that Harlan Capital had not dismissed me, I had resigned, and I had a signed resignation letter and a formal reference letter from my direct supervisor that said so, both of which I could pull up immediately. Then I paused. I said that while we were being transparent as a family, there was something else I thought Daniel's father in particular might want to see. The room went very still. Monica's composure flickered. Just for a moment. A small tightening around the eyes. She hadn't expected this. She had expected me to be defensive, to be tearful, to be scrambling. She had not expected me to have a counter. I looked at Daniel's father, a quiet, dignified man named Gerald who had built his company from nothing, and I said I was sorry to do this here and now, but that I had been trying to find the right moment for several months and circumstances had apparently made the choice for me. I said I had found some financial irregularities in the Caldwell Properties records that I believed warranted an immediate review by an independent forensic accountant. Monica laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. She said this was a deflection. She said I was trying to change the subject because I had no answer to her accusation. I picked up my phone. I said she was welcome to believe that. I turned to Gerald and I asked if I could show him something. He nodded. He looked confused and alarmed. But he nodded. I walked around the table and I stood beside him and I showed him my phone. The vendor payment records. The Meridian Consulting Group entries. The Delaware Incorporation documents. The marriage record connecting Meridian's owner to Monica's college roommate. Organized, dated, annotated. Gerald is 71 years old. He has been in business for 3 decades. He looked at that screen for about 90 seconds without saying a word. His face changed in a way I will never forget. Not anger, exactly. Something quieter and more devastating than anger. Recognition. He looked up at Monica. She was already starting to speak something about context, about consulting agreements, about a misunderstanding, but her voice had lost its certainty. The smoothness was gone. For the first time in the 4 years I had known her, Monica looked like she didn't know what to say next. Daniel stood up. He looked at his sister for a long moment. Then he looked at me. He said my name, just my name, and in that one word I heard him understanding what had happened. All of it. Not just tonight, but all of it. Gerald asked Monica directly if she had authorized payments to Meridian Consulting Group. She said yes. She said it was a legitimate consulting arrangement. He asked her if Meridian was owned by her college roommate. She hesitated 1 second too long. That second was the answer. The dinner ended very differently than it had begun. Gerald asked everyone outside of immediate family to give them a moment, and to his credit, he was composed and courteous about it, the kind of man who, even in crisis, thinks about the people around him. Our friends filed out quietly, most of them looking at their shoes. The servers disappeared. It was just family left in that white linen room with the candles burning down. I won't go into everything that was said in those next 30 minutes. Some of it was private in a way that even now I feel I should protect. But Monica did not deny it. She tried to reframe it. She talked about how much she had contributed to the company, how undercompensated she felt, how the consulting work was real even if the structure was unusual. But when her own father laid out what the records showed, the reframing fell apart. She had taken, over 18 months, approximately $191,000. She did not apologize to me that night. I didn't expect her to. What I didn't expect was my mother-in-law. She sat very quietly through most of it, and when it was over, she came to me and took both my hands and looked at me and said she was sorry. She didn't explain what she was sorry for exactly. I think she knew that I understood. In the weeks that followed, Caldwell Properties engaged a forensic accounting firm. The investigation confirmed what my documents had suggested and found additional transactions I had missed. The total amount was closer to $230,000. Gerald filed a police report. The case was referred to the district attorney's office. Monica hired a lawyer. I also sent Monica a text message after the police report was filed, not to gloat, not to threaten, just 3 sentences. I told her I had tried to find a quiet way to handle it. I told her I had not wanted it to go this way. I told her I hoped she would get the help she clearly needed to make better choices. She never responded. I didn't expect her to do that either. My Westbrook degree, for the record, is entirely legitimate. I graduated with a 3.8 gigapascals. My supervisor at Harland Capital sent me a follow-up email when she heard what had happened. Apparently word travels, and she offered to write me any additional reference letters I might need. I thanked her and told her I thought I was okay. Daniel and I had a long, hard conversation the week after the dinner. Not about Monica, about us. About the fact that I had known for 4 months and hadn't told him. He was hurt by that. He had a right to be. I explained my reasoning, the worry that he wouldn't believe me, the need to have something concrete, and he listened, really listened, in a way I wasn't sure he would. He didn't tell me I was wrong to be worried. He said he wished I had trusted him more. And then he said he understood why I hadn't, and I think it took real honesty for him to say both of those things. We are okay. Better than okay, actually. The conversation we had that week cracked something open between us that had been sealed for years, assumptions we'd both been carrying about what the other person would or wouldn't believe. We talk more now. I tell him more. He asks more questions. It is not a small thing, what we found in the wreckage of that dinner. His parents are still processing everything. Gerald is methodical and private about grief, so he moves through it slowly and without much visible evidence. Daniel's mother has called me twice since then, both times to talk about nothing in particular, recipes and neighborhood gossip, and a show she's watching, and I think those calls are her way of saying something she doesn't have words for yet. I take them at face value, and I am glad she makes them. As for Monica, the case is still working through the legal system as of now. Her attorney has indicated she intends to make restitution to avoid trial. I don't know what will happen. I know it isn't my decision. What I know is this. That night, in that corridor outside the private dining room, when I was standing alone for 2 minutes pulling up files on my phone, I was terrified. Not of Monica, not of what she'd said, but of what I was about to do. Of the damage it was going to cause, of the faces that would change that night and never quite go back. I did it anyway. Because the alternative was letting someone rewrite who I am to protect themselves, and I had worked too hard and too honestly to allow that. My promotion still stands. My title still says Regional Finance Director. I still walk into that office every Monday morning and do the work. And if Monica had ever bothered to actually look at my credentials instead of fabricating reasons to doubt them, she would have known I am very, very good at following the money.